Today was a big day for Niners fans, with General Manager John Lynch stepping in front of the media to deliver some important updates about the San Francisco 49ers. When Lynch speaks, you listen, because even when he's not giving away the full playbook, there's always something to read between the lines. In this session, he covered three major points that everyone's talking about, but also dropped a handful of smaller insights that might not scream headlines, but still carry real weight for the direction of the team. And trust me, what was said today isn't something we'll just forget tomorrow. This is the kind of content that shapes narratives for the whole offseason and maybe even further. Let's dive into the main thing everybody's been itching to hear about: Brock Purdy's contract situation. Now, Lynch didn't come out with a fresh announcement or a breaking news headline, but what he did offer was reassurance, a steady voice confirming that, yes, getting an extension done with Purdy is a priority, and yes, they want it wrapped up before the team hits organized team activities. That's the goal. Nothing cryptic or vague here. He wants this handled early, and that speaks volumes. It shows intent. It shows that both sides are on the same page. According to Lynch, Brock wants to stay, and the team absolutely wants to keep him. That kind of alignment doesn't always guarantee a deal will get done, but it makes things a whole lot easier. When the player and the front office both want the same thing, resolution tends to follow naturally. That's the energy Lynch gave off: calm, confident, and optimistic that a deal could very well be locked in before the offseason kicks into full gear. He was even asked point-blank about the feasibility of getting it all finalized on that timeline. His response? Still confident. You could see it in his demeanor. There's a sense that, while nothing's signed yet, the pieces are moving in the right direction. And that's why it felt different from past contract situations we've seen with this team. Think back to guys like Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa, or Brandon Ayuk. Those negotiations were tense. They dragged on. They got messy. There was posturing. There were reports flying around left and right. One day things looked good, the next it was chaos. We've been through that roller coaster before. But with Purdy, this feels smoother. Not easy, but smoother. Like both sides want to get it done and are working toward a shared goal without all the drama. Lynch seemed very intentional in setting that tone. He made it clear that this isn't some vague hope. It's a real objective. Get the contract figured out and do it before the team really starts grinding in the offseason. That level of clarity is refreshing. No cryptic comments. No dancing around the issue. Just, we want Brock here, Brock wants to be here, and we're going to try to make it happen soon. Compared to previous years where negotiations would stretch out into training camp and beyond, this approach is a huge breath of fresh air. And honestly, it reflects how different this situation is. Purdy has become a guy in San Francisco, and he's earned a payday. The team knows it. He knows it. And the tone from Lynch suggests they want to do right by him without turning it into a battle. Now, beyond just the when and the if, there's also the how. Lynch gave some subtle hints that the team is prepared to handle a significant financial impact up front. That stood out. There's this belief floating around, one I tend to agree with, that the structure of Purdy's deal could involve a heavier cap hit in the first year. That's not how these contracts always go. A lot of times, teams push those bigger hits into later years to keep things flexible now. But with the 49ers, there's a pattern forming. They've consistently ranked among the top 5 teams in the league when it comes to spending, and Lynch mentioned wanting to stay in that group moving forward. That suggests they're not afraid to take some of the financial weight now if it means setting themselves up better in future seasons. Front-loading some of that guaranteed money could give them more breathing room down the line, especially as other big contracts come due. So while 2025 might be a little tight financially, the years beyond start looking a whole lot better. It's a strategic move. Pay now, save later. And when you have a quarterback you believe in, and make no mistake, the Niners believe in Brock, that strategy makes total sense. You invest in your guy, you build around him, and you give your roster the space to stay competitive. That's the blueprint. And if they follow it with Purdy, it could be a game changer for how they manage the cap over the next few years. Now, that's not to say there aren't other moves being considered. Lynch didn't go into specifics, but you could feel it. There's more going on behind the scenes. Other potential contract extensions, maybe even some restructures, are probably in the mix. These front office conversations are always happening in layers. When a team is looking at locking up its quarterback long-term, that usually opens the door to a whole series of decisions. Who else are we keeping? Who might be on the move? How does this all affect the cap? These are the kinds of questions being asked right now in the 49ers front office, and Lynch gave off the impression that they're thinking carefully about how every piece fits together. He also touched on injury updates, and again, the tone was positive. We're talking ACL and MCL recoveries. Big injuries, but the feedback coming from the team has been nothing but encouraging. There was a recent visit to a specialist, and although they didn't give a firm timeline, all signs point to things progressing better than expected. That's always huge. It's one thing to hear rumors or reports from outside sources, but when it comes straight from the top, from the GM himself, that carries weight. It tells you the organization is happy with the rehab process and expects those guys to be back and ready to contribute. No surprises, no setbacks, just solid recovery and optimism. Now, about those trade rumors that have been swirling lately, Lynch addressed those too. It's clear there's still interest in certain players, especially from teams that were sniffing around as far back as last year. But the message from the Niners has been consistent. They want to keep their guys. The player in question was signed for a reason, and the team believes he still has a role to play. So while the phone might be ringing, it doesn't sound like they're picking up with any serious intention to deal. That could always change. We've seen it happen before. But for now, Lynch seemed to shut the door on that idea, at least in the short term. And here's something else that stood out. There is a clear confidence in one particular player's development. Someone who's still young, still finding his way, but has shown flashes of becoming a real asset. The team doubled down on its belief in him, saying they want him to remain part of the core moving forward. That's huge. If you think back to last season, he showed glimpses of what he can do, and if he can replicate or build on that performance, even in a future season like 2026, that's value. That's production. That's a win. There was even a moment when Lynch acknowledged that, there had been offers, or at least interest, about potentially moving that player. But the organization stood firm. They weren't just going to give him away unless the deal made absolute sense. And clearly, nobody hit that threshold. So he's still on the roster. Some might see that as a risk, especially if they believe the player's ceiling has already been reached. But from the team's perspective, it's a calculated bet. If he pops off again, they win big. If he plateaus, they reassess. But they're not panicking, they're not rushing, and that speaks to a certain level of trust they build internally. Now, switching gears to one of the hottest topics every offseason, the offensive line. And let me tell you, Lynch didn't hold back. He flat out said that last year's performance up front wasn't good enough. He used the word embarrassing, which, coming from a GM, is no small thing. That's the kind of language that tells you changes are coming. Maybe not in terms of big-name signings or headline-grabbing trades, but the draft? That's where the real work will happen. The 49ers know that if they want to take the next step, they've got to be better in the trenches. But here's where it gets interesting. They're not hitting the panic button. They actually feel pretty solid about a few spots on that line. Right tackle, they're confident. Center, they like what they have, even if that might not be the fan-favorite take. Left guard, that's more of a question mark, but they've got internal options and still plan to explore talent through the draft. What this tells us is that while they're not ignoring the issues, they're also not letting Twitter dictate how they feel about their own roster. They're evaluating based on what they see every day, not just what the outside noise says. That being said, I get where the concerns are coming from, especially at center. That position was shaky last year. If they run it back with the same guy and the same results, it could become a real liability. But the coaching staff sees things we don't. They've got access to the nuances, the film, the practice habits. Maybe they believe there's untapped potential there. Still, I'm hoping for a leap in performance. Because if we get a repeat of last season's production, it's going to be hard to justify the decision to stand pat. And look, the Niners were consistently one of the best overall teams last season, but even with all that success, their offensive line play was near the bottom in key categories. That's a problem. Great teams can't afford to have glaring weak spots. So, while Lynch is expressing confidence, there's still a lot to prove. And unless someone unexpected steps up in a big way, That pressure is going to fall squarely on whoever wins that center job. It's a pivotal spot, and if they don't get it right, it could ripple through the entire offense. Now, with free agency winding down, it's becoming more clear that whoever takes that center role is probably already on roster. That's just the reality. There weren't many moves made in that area, and that tells you a lot. The coaching staff believes in this guy, or at least wants to give him a fair shot. But belief alone isn't enough. He's going to have to earn it. If he can rise to the occasion, awesome. But if not, the team could find itself scrambling again. The spotlight will definitely be on him this summer. And here's something to keep in mind. He's still under contract for 2 more seasons. So even if he struggles early, he's not going anywhere right away. The team has invested in him, and they'll want to see it through. But again, it all comes down to performance. Potential doesn't mean much if it doesn't translate on the field. I'm rooting for the guy, but we need more than just flashes. We need consistency. We need stability. Now, zooming out a bit, the overall state of the roster is still strong. That's the good news. The core is intact. There's still a lot of top-end talent here, and that gives the front office the luxury of being selective with their moves. They don't need to overhaul everything. They just need to plug a few holes and continue building through the draft, which, by the way, is coming up fast. And speaking of the draft, it's going to be fascinating this year. The word going around is that it's a weird class, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. Not a ton of depth. Not a lot of guys that scream franchise player. That could shake things up in a major way. Teams might reach earlier than expected, or guys who normally go in the top 10 could slip. There's going to be movement. There's going to be surprises. It's just that kind of year. From a financial standpoint, drafting a quarterback is always huge. It gives you cost control, which opens up flexibility everywhere else. That's why teams love getting their guy on a rookie deal. But if this year's quarterback class isn't strong, you could see a totally different draft dynamic unfold. Maybe more trades. Maybe more defensive players going early. The ripple effects will be real. That's why being well-positioned with multiple picks becomes such a powerful advantage. And guess who's got the most? San Francisco and Baltimore. 11 picks each. That's massive. That gives the 49ers so much flexibility. They can move up. They can move down. They can take swings on high-upside players without mortgaging the future. It's a luxury most teams don't have. If even a few of those picks hit, and I mean really hit, this team could be scary. You mix in that young talent with the established stars, and you're cooking with gas. But if they miss, that's when things get dicey. The margin for error is thin in this league, and even with a strong core, a bad draft class can set you back fast. Still, the vibe around the team feels positive. Cautious optimism. They've got the tools. They've got the front office. They've got the culture. Now, it's just about execution. Nailing the draft. Managing the cap. Making smart decisions on extensions. That's how you stay competitive year after year. That's how you build something sustainable. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to 49ers Zone and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the San Francisco 49ers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The rumors are swirling. A jaw-dropping highlight reel featuring Josh Allen has surfaced online, and it's raising more than just eyebrows in the NFL community. Could the dynamic quarterback for the Buffalo Bills be heading to the San Francisco 49ers? The idea seems almost too exciting to be true, but insiders have hinted at the possibility, fueling speculation that this bold move might soon become a reality. What would it mean for the 49ers, and how could it shift the balance of power in the NFC? Allen's resume speaks for itself. The 27-year-old has been a force to be reckoned with since being drafted by the Bills in 2018. With 6 playoff appearances, 5 consecutive division titles, and numerous franchise records, Allen's electric play style has captivated fans and critics alike. His breakout year in 2020, which saw him lead Buffalo to their first AFC Championship game appearance in decades, solidified his status as one of the league's most elite quarterbacks. His combination of arm strength, mobility, and playmaking ability makes him a perfect fit for a team like the 49ers, known for their high-powered offense. The 49ers, while already a formidable contender with a stacked roster, could see Allen as the missing piece to elevate them from NFC Championship hopefuls to Super Bowl champions. The opportunity to pair Allen with playmakers like Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Christian McCaffrey would create a nightmare scenario for opposing defenses. Imagine the potential for Allen's dual-threat ability to unlock new dimensions in Kyle Shanahan's offensive scheme, especially with the pressure and defensive prowess the 49ers bring to every game. However, this potential move is not without its challenges. While Allen has had an impressive career with the Bills, 2024 has been a season of ups and downs. Despite an explosive start, Allen faced some struggles, including injury concerns that raised questions about his durability. The 49ers would need to weigh the risks of acquiring a quarterback who has been in the spotlight for both his incredible feats and his occasional setbacks. Would the 49ers be willing to take on such a high-profile acquisition, or would they opt to remain committed to their current quarterback situation? As the offseason approaches, the speculation surrounding Josh Allen's future with the Buffalo Bills grows more intense. Could this be the year he dons a new jersey? The idea of him joining the 49ers has fans from both teams on the edge of their seats, eagerly awaiting the next chapter in Allen's already storied career. If the rumors prove true, this move could shake up the NFL landscape in a way few could have imagined. The football world is watching, and the 49ers' future could be brighter than ever. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the San Francisco 49ers, make sure to subscribe to 49ers Zone and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.